So let's look at the last story that Dan Rather did for 60 Minutes. Truth, directed by James Vanderbilt. This is a movie based on the last story that Dan Rather did for 60 Minutes about Bush's military record, or lack of military record, when he went AWOL and served in the National Guard instead of serving in Vietnam. Dan Rather, played by Robert Redford, finds these memos from a source and tries to verify they're true and whether or not what these memos say about George Bush serving in the National Guard. Was it true that there were strings pulled in order to make it so he wouldn't have to serve in Vietnam or not? This was all going on when George W. Bush was president, running for re-election against Senator John Kerry in Massachusetts. This movie does a very good job of talking about this story, and Robert Redford is great as Dan Rather. You got Cate Blanchett playing his producer, who is excellent in the movie. I already did like her. Dennis Quaid is great as part of the news team. You had Topher Grace, who was really funny and really great in the movie, as well as the young upstart reporter, who's also part of Dan Rather's team. Elizabeth Moss, I believe her last name is also part of the team as well, and she's great in the movie. John Benjamin Hickey plays the CBS executive, who is pretty good. And Dermot Mulroney is on the cast list, but I didn't really even notice him in the movie. If he's in there, I didn't really notice him, so it's kind of a waste of putting his name up there. He's a talented actor. Mostly this movie is about showing what has happened to our news over the years. The fact that our news is taken over by corporations. ABC is owned by Disney, CBS in this case. They mentioned that's owned by Viacom. It's also owned by Comcast as well. And then we got CNN owned by Time Warner, and Fox, which has also got corporate parent, I forget the name of it, but it's owned by Rupert Murdoch. And this really shows what has happened to our news, and that our news is not always as reliable as it should be. It talks about the fact that 60 Minutes was the first news show to prove that news can actually get ratings, which that was done pretty well in the movie. And even though this movie really just shows old news that I already knew already, it was nice to see it, and it was nice to see another perspective of what was happening on reporting this story from the inside a little bit. The cons to this movie is that it is old news that I pretty much knew already, and I was maybe a little bit bored, but I did like this movie a lot, and I think the performances are really good in this movie. I would give this movie a C+. I think it's a rental, really, but I do think the performances in it are really good, and it is a very good movie. That's all I gotta say for Truth.